Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Laura Prada from the Telesur Studios in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with the news. Stay with us. In Ecuador, National Court of Justice has rejected former Vice President Jorge Glas' appeal and upheld the preventive detention against him. Glas is currently under investigation for alleged embezzlement of public funds and irregularities over the contracting of company for oil exploitation in the Ecuadorian Amazon. The ex-vice president is currently serving 6 years in prison for bribery related to the Brazilian construction company Odebrecht. And now we talk about Cuba. A Cuban and United States business summit has been held at the Cuban embassy in Washington, D.C. to improve bilateral relations in the business sector. The meeting, organized by the US-Cuba Business Council, gathered lawmakers, politicians, and businessmen. According to the head of the council, participants expressed their disappointment in the Trump administration's escalation of hostile policies towards Cuba. But the council also applauded the support and interest they've received from U.S. farmers to invest in Cuba and establish import routes. Also in Cuba, American Airlines has confirmed it will continue expanding connections to Cuba despite the United States government restricting travel to the island. Earlier this month, the Trump administration activated Title III of the Helms-Burton Act, which allows U.S. nationals to sue for damages over private property nationalized at the triumph of the Cuban Revolution in 1959. And one of these properties is the Jose Marti Airport in Havana. If there is a lawsuit against the airport, for example, American Airlines and over 40 other airlines could be affected. A United States official has admitted the death of a 10-year-old migrant child in federal custody, which was not reported at the time. The girl from El Salvador died in September 29, 2018, meaning she was the first of 6 children to die in the care of U.S. officials over the past 8 months. A spokesperson from the Department of Health said that the girl arrived at the resettlement center in a medically fragile state. While officials are not required to announce internal death to the public, the treatment of migrant children in United States custody has received global condemnation. And we continue in the United States because 3 Texas environmental groups plan to sue Valero Energy Corp under the Clean Air Act for pollution at the company's Port Arthur refinery. The organizations Environment Texas, the Sierra Club, and the Port Arthur Community Action Network say the refinery violated pollution limits in over 600 cases by releasing toxic chemicals since 2014. The Clean Air Act allows citizens to sue in a federal court when government agencies fail to halt pollution, and penalties can reach nearly $100,000 US per violation. And now we change topic. The exiled former president of Catalonia, Charles Puigdemont, held a press conference in Belgium as his first campaign for election to the European Parliament intensifies. The Together for Catalonia party candidates said the European Union elections on May 23rd are an opportunity as the region pushes for independence.
This is the most disruptive opportunity we've had since the October 1st independence referendum. In these elections, we have the opportunity to send a strong message and continue in this struggle using different means, by multiplying, not just adding, multiplying to the visibility and efficiency of our cause. What could we be capable of if we have these means that we haven't had before? Imagine Clara Ponsati, Tony Comín and myself entering the European Parliament and explaining firsthand, in first person, that those of us from October 1st have won the elections in Catalonia and that they have to listen to us. Imagine what that may mean for politics in general, for the debate on European democracy, and for all of our friends in prison as well. What a light of hope that would be. Sota del Real prison.
En general, sobre el debat sobre la democràcia europea, però també
And the British Prime Minister Theresa May's newly proposed Brexit deal has been dismissed by members of her own party and the opposition. May had hoped that her offer of a second referendum would help her finally pass the three-times rejected Brexit deal throughout Parliament. However, it has been rejected by pro-Brexiters in the Conservative Party as well as the opposition Labour Party, which has proposed its own negotiating priorities, including access to the single market and a custom union, neither of which feature in May's plan.
How we do that. Given that this bill appears to have been sunk even before its publication, the Prime Minister must know that the only way now to break the deadlock, which, as today's terrible news at British Steel shows, is damaging our economy, is to put the choice back to the British people.
Absolutely right.
So can I urge her at this 11th hour to take that one final step, to change her mind and to say that she will support a confirmatory referendum?
And the biggest blow to May was the resignation of the leader of the Commons, Andrea Leadsom, who had served as the government's main representative to Parliament from June 11, 2017.
But I recognise there is a strength of feeling in this.
Because, I have been supporting Brexit totally for the last 3 years, and I just couldn't, as leader of the Commons with responsibility for the legislation, stand up at business questions tomorrow and denounce a bill that I just think has elements I cannot support that aren't Brexit.
But you've held out for so long, so why to this point?
I have been determined to deliver Brexit, and I'm just worried that this bill with its new elements in it would not do that. It's been a really tough day.
Should the Prime Minister go now? Should the Prime Minister go?
Thanks very much.
Should the PM go, Andrea?
More than 2,000 students are taking part in the 18th edition of the Latin American and the Caribbean Student Congress that is taking place this week in Venezuela. The focus of this Congress this year is a discussion about foreign interventionism and the reality of Venezuela as opposed to the narrative spread by the mainstream media. To know and to understand it better, we have the following story for you.
This is a Congress which brings together students from all across Latin America and the Caribbean. The 18th edition of the Latin American and Caribbean Student Congress was born in Havana in 1966. In its 2019 edition, the International Forum will allow participants to discover the reality of Venezuela, as opposed to the falsehoods spread by the mainstream media.
Haiti and Venezuela are linked historically. We have always supported one another. Haitians strongly support the Venezuelan people, their sovereignty, and ongoing fight.
Like any other year, the event looks to encourage a discussion on regional topics and challenges, as well as the role of student movements from Latin America and the Caribbean. As part of the discussion, participants expand their understanding of achievements made in the protection of education by the Venezuelan government, despite an illegal economic blockade by the United States.
We identify with the Bolivarian Revolution. In Nicaragua, they tried to carry out a coup d'etat last year. But we Nicaraguans were able to defend our country and our model of free education and health. In Venezuela, they have the same model. These systems are not approved by the US.
Colombian students were also present in this event. During this 18th edition of the CLI, students came to a consensus on the urgency to stop attacks by the U.S. government against Venezuela.
We are the sons and daughters of Bolívar. We are children of the great nation. We are here to talk about education and to send a message to the entire continent to stop this aggression the Venezuelan people are suffering under.
The international delegations will participate in a series of activities until May 25th, with a goal of coming to a robust understanding of the reality in Venezuela as learned through people-to-people exchanges, both with other foreign delegations and through the Venezuelan people themselves.
Like this, we go to a first break hearing from the South. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at Telesur English and on my account at Laura Pitlesper. Stay with us.
Discover the cultural diversity that defines a continent. The place where art and tradition are part of the same nucleus. Artistic expressions, values, real life. Fridays, only on Telesur.
Our actions have an impact on the environment. It's our responsibility to change for the sake of our planet. Let's be part of this transition. Watch, preserve, and protect your green zone. Wednesdays, only on Telesur.
Following a public outcry, Brazil's far-right President Jair Bolsonaro has announced it will exclude assault weapons from his gun decree that allows citizens to carry weapons with them. The government excluded rifles, shotguns, and carbines from the decree passed earlier this month, but citizens will still be allowed to carry handguns since gun regulations were loosened. Brazilian's arms maker Taurus said it had received 2,000 orders from an assault weapon brand normally used by police and military forces. Brazil's Supreme Court is still considering whether Bolsonaro's gun decree breaches the Constitution after an opposition party challenged the order. And Uruguay's largest workers announced a partial strike this Wednesday to support workers in the natural gas sector in their struggle against Brazilian oil giant Petrobras. The strike was announced after workers reached a standstill in negotiations with Petrobras and after the company confirmed their plans to pull out all operations from Uruguay, which will lead to mass layoffs. Workers affected by these events have been on hunger strike for over 20 days. Unions have confirmed that their strike will be ongoing until the negotiations continue. Our correspondent in Uruguay, Mateo Grille, has more details for us in the following report he sent earlier. Welcome, Mateo.
Thousands of people have joined the protests taking place in the city center of Montevideo, which is part of the national strike by labor unions against the gas company Petrobras. Gas workers have also been on a hunger strike for 23 days. Petrobras has not replied to the workers' demands, which include no more layoffs and new negotiations after the company announced that it is leaving the country. Labor unions came to the capital to demand a meeting with the president, Tabaré Vázquez, and to give him a document asking the government to intervene in the process in order to minimize the consequences of the company leaving the country. The workers also want to discuss a way that they can keep their jobs. The president has not responded to workers' demands. This conflict between workers and Petrobras has been going on for several months, and it got more tense in the last weeks after the company announced plans to fire 50 workers, or 1/3 of the entire staff.
Thank you, Mateo. And now we talk about Colombia because another social leader has been attacked in the Chocó region. Henry Chaverra was attacked on Tuesday night along with his bodyguard, who was hurt. Chaverra defends the Afro-Colombian communities that live on the border of the Antioquia and Chocó regions. And now we go to the Caribbean. In Jamaica, Prime Minister Andrew Holness has allocated an additional $18 million to address water issues. This means a total of $92 million will now be made available for the trucking of water to areas affected by the water crisis. The National Water Commission has also been directed to conduct a review that will give rise to the expansion of raw water storage and increase availability of raw water. Water levels at the Mona Reservoir and Hermitage Dam are down to just over 27% and 33% of their capacities. Teachers are marching in Ecuador to protest against labor reforms demanded by International Monetary Fund. Several hundred retired teachers are marching through the center of Quito to the presidential palace. They are demanding that they receive their benefits in full. The protest is part of a mounting wave of discontent among workers over the government's economic policies.
We are here, the public workers, to report that we are not being paid, despite everything they told us, saying they will pay us in May, June, July, but they actually have not paid us. They have lied to us. I have colleagues who are 70 years old, and they haven't got paid either.
And as we were saying, teachers are marching in Ecuador since this Wednesday, and they're protesting against labor reforms demanded by the International Monetary Fund. To find out more, we have the following story with more details to understand better these new policies.
More protests are planned in the coming days against the government of Ecuador, this time over the labor reforms announced by the government's Work and Wages Council. For the trade unions, these reforms correspond to conditions imposed by the International Monetary Fund.
We want him to face a motion of censure before the National Assembly so that he can be sacked for not obeying the laws.
The government is proposing 3 labor reforms relating to special contracts for new businesses, fixed-term contracts, and the regulation of the working week. The unions are already taking action, including a protest by teachers this Wednesday, where they're demanding the removal of the Minister of Finance.
It's not right for the government to sign this letter of intent behind the backs of people and the workers. This means counter-reforms agreed to suit the bankers and businessmen at home and abroad.
They're not the only ones. The Foot Union Federation, until recently an ally of the government, is also proposing escalating protests.
It's not just these 3 reforms. They are planning to roll back other rights too. That's why we are calling for action on the 6th of June as part of the preparation for a national strike. Pensioners will start a hunger strike to demand that get paid. Transporter workers will strike on the 11th of June, a series of actions leading to the big national strike.
One of the most controversial points in these reforms is that the current trial period of 3 months for new employees could be extended to 3 years. The unions say that means they could be sacked without any right to compensation.
And like this, we go to a second and very short break. Stay tuned.
Acompañamos a los pueblos que resisten en cada una de sus luchas.
Somos esa ventana que se abre para visibilizarlos entre fronteras.
Thursdays, only on Telesur.
为了保持身体健康，我冥想。
Para mantenerme saludable, yo corro.
To keep myself healthy, I study.
Για να διατηρηθώ υγιής, τρέφομαι σωστά.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo bailo.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo purifico mi espíritu a través del cuerpo. ¿Y tú?
Get your body. Tuesdays, only on Telesur.
We are back in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The Minister of Health has called for community engagement to curb the current Ebola outbreak in the country. Following warnings about the Ebola virus by the World Health Organization, the Democratic Republic of Congo Minister of Health called on humanitarian organizations working to control the virus and to engage communities. The WHO previously attributed the challenge in accessing communities to various armed conflicts.
To improve community engagement in the fight against Ebola, I believe that it is also necessary for all those involved to respect communities and especially to listen to them. We must not ask ourselves what else do we have to do. We must ask ourselves how to do it better, by first listening to the communities.
In Guinea-Bissau, thousands of supporters of the ruling party have protested, calling on the president to nominate the party's leader as prime minister after an election victory in March. President José Mario Vaz said last week that he wasn't ready to nominate Domingos Simões Pereira as prime minister. Pereira was fired in 2015 due to the deepening power struggles with Vaz. Once a protest coincided with a new 3-day strike on public sector workers over unpaid wages and worsening conditions of their work posts. In Sudan, protesters have vowed to continue demonstrating in the streets to demand civilian rule. The protesters have urged both their leaders and the military council to commit to finding a solution. They threaten more demonstrations if civilian rule is not established. The two sides launched a round of new talks late Sunday over the Sovereign Council to rule Sudan for a 3-year transitional period following the ousting of President Omar al-Bashir last month.
Everyone should be flexible in negotiating, whether the military council or the opposition forces, to get out of the crisis. If the demonstrators continue to escalate and put pressure on the civil disobedience, this may give the opportunity to the detractors of the revolution to lure us towards violence.
And now we go to South Africa, where newly elected members of parliament have declared Cyril Ramaphosa as president during their first post-election sitting. Just before lawmakers were sworn in for this new period, with the ruling African National Congress taking 230 out of the 400 seats in parliament.
Everybody knows that we've got to do this work, and that's precisely what we're working on now. And we will present an outcome that I think our country will welcome and will be pleased with, because it will have a very good balance of gender, youth, competence, demographic, regional spread, and all that. So that's what we are going to.
And the South African president congratulated the opposition for their campaign and results in the polls. Cyril Ramaphosa shook hands with leader of the economic freedom fighters, Julius Malema, who won 44 seats.
Okay. Well, congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
You give Lel a deputy. Okay. For no, this means not anymore. Jealous down.
Yeah.
Jealous down.
To have more details about these results, we have the following report that sent us earlier our correspondent, Matua Malaji. Welcome.
The Chief Justice of South Africa, Mogoeng, presided over the election of the Speaker, Deputy Speaker and the President of the Republic of South Africa. This is after a very highly contested election that took place just a week and a half ago. Now, the political system in South Africa works a bit differently, where the citizens will elect a party and the party will in turn put forward to Parliament their preferred candidates for the position of Speaker, Deputy Speaker and President. Cyril Ramaphosa is now President-elect after being elected unopposed, or nominated unopposed, rather, in today's proceedings in Parliament, which were presided by the Chief Justice. Now it's all eyes to Saturday, when President Cyril Ramaphosa will be inaugurated and will be expected to form a government that will run this country for the next 5 years. And it will be a tough job to face for President Cyril Ramaphosa, with a country with a battling economy and a high rate of unemployment, especially among the youth. But now, members of Parliament today exchanged words of congratulations with the President, vowing to work together in the next 5 years. This is South Africa's 6th parliament since 1994, when it was the end of apartheid and the dawn of a new democracy. And we've seen a lot of young people making their way into the opposition benches, and even in the governing party, the ANC, young people are making their way in the Parliament of South Africa. And South Africans have high expectations for the next 5 years to see if this government and these MPs will have their best interest at heart. It's back to you, studio.
Thank you, Matu. And like this, we come to the end of this report. You can find this and much more other stories on our website, as you're seeing, telesurenglish.net, where you can read opinion article or watch our special interviews. Continue with Telesur, connecting the global south. Until next time, thank you for watching.